All right, everyone. Now it's time to talk about the RNC. Of course, the chairwomanship at the moment of the GOP's RNC, the Republican National Committee, up for grabs. Ronna McDaniel is running for a fourth term as the head of the RNC. Deeply embattled. There is a fairly large upswelling of dissident activity right now within the GOP. There's a silent ballot, and the people there that form their committees, they'll be voting on who's going to lead the party. Much like with the Senate, where they retained McConnell, and there were a few holdouts, but it wasn't like a huge deal. It's a bigger deal with the House right now. At the end of the day, McCarthy will probably be put in the Speaker of the House position. And by the way, to people that are criticizing Trump and saying, well, look, he backed McCarthy, he's sold out. He's making the same mistakes. That's so that you don't end up with a potential situation where the Republicans are incapable of getting a Speaker of the House role. Donald Trump wants to step back from the situation in the off chance that something goes terribly wrong and Hakeem Jeffries ends up being Speaker inexplicably, so that he can't be blamed for it. By saying that he endorses McCarthy, whatever happens with regards to that race, Trump doesn't take any flack for it. I think he would rather deal with him than McConnell, and he's like, well, McConnell got put back in there, so it doesn't really matter now, does it? His decision, while something that I can't ideologically support, from a strategic point of view makes sense. Anyway, there are some other people that are trying to knock Ronna McDaniel out. Harmet Dillon, for example, another Republican is running for RNC. Appears to have a relatively decent amount of support. Typically, you're going to get the rubber stamping of a person who's an incumbent within one of these effectively non-elected positions. So being head of the RNC, you're running the DCCC or DNC on the other side, etc. Typically, those people, they step down eventually, but they don't tend to get shit-canned unless things go catastrophically wrong. What happened in the midterms in 2022? Things went catastrophically wrong. You had Mitch McConnell diverting money that should have been used for Blake Masters and Herschel Walker at other vulnerable Senate positions, and using it in a race where the Republicans couldn't lose in Alaska. He did this solely because he was worried about having a few more MAGA votes in the Senate and then canning him as the leader of the Senate Republicans. Because he knew, well, if we pick up a couple seats and end up with a majority, but then I can't keep my position, I've gotten shit canned. I've been demoted to just being a senator. Mitch McConnell has a gigantic bloated ego, and he put his own position. He'd rather lead a minority than serve in a majority. He put his own ego and the GOP ahead of the actual party itself, which is hilarious. As a non-Republican, I don't care about the partisan aspect of it, but the qualified candidates were the ones getting shit on. This trickled down to the House. You'll remember Madison Cawthorn was openly targeted by McCarthy, using FTX funds in part. It's interesting how that never really generated a major news headline. Ronna McDaniel is part of the same problem. She is a GOP unipartyist insider who would get along better with the average liberal Democrat than with someone who even leans towards MAGA populism. And unfortunately, she is probably going to continue on as the head of the RNC. Looking forward to 24, since you have McConnell and McCarthy and McDaniel, all in the same roles they were in before, controlling various money, certainly ideologically having weight over other Republicans and over the fundraising apparatus, you can expect going into 2024 that if the candidate is not a neocon or an astroturfed fake populist sort, that they will get shit on by their own party. Just to be clear, that is what will happen. In 2024, that will occur. There is the outside chance that Ronna McDaniel in the end gets knocked off by Harmet Dillon. It is unlikely. And this is the GOP's way of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. You're going forward into an election where you have a very favorable Senate map, by the way. If you thought that the Senate map tilted in favor of the GOP in these last midterms, it's going to be difficult even with shenanigans for them to keep the GOP from controlling the Senate. Have you studied the 24 map? As far as the House seats, again, the economy is not demonstrably getting better, and people are starting to get more and more debt because they have to buy groceries. I think it implodes next year at some point. We'll see. We got the Philly jobs report for Q1, sharply downward revising the number of jobs created by Bidenomics. Yeah, it's not pretty. It's nowhere near keeping up with the increase in population growth when you readjust the numbers. The problem is that they were counting jobs multiple times because there were multiple job holders and that wasn't fixed for. Very interesting. It drops it to a 5-digit number for the whole quarter. Not even a 6-digit total? Yeah, the jobs market's really doing well, Joe. You're going to have to revise unemployment upward at some point. And the GOP should fire Ronna McDaniel, to be clear. But they didn't fire McConnell. They are unlikely to fire McCarthy. And if they do, without a suitable replacement, you end up with a Dem Speaker of a majority Republican House. You can end up with these situations. They'll solidify behind him. They'll probably solidify behind Ronna McDaniel. And at the end of the day, MAGA, therefore, has an uphill climb in 24. By the way, when people say, well, that's why we need DeSantis. If DeSantis is not an AstroTurf candidate, that is, if he is genuinely a populist, or at least populist-like, he will get shit-canned too. If he manages to avoid getting shit-canned by the RNC and by the House majority, Senate minority, and actually manages to get in there, it'll be evidence of AstroTurfing. Well, that's not helpful. Okay, we've got someone who will make believe. Well, the Republicans have always done that on a dozen issues anyway. It's just GOP. I don't think that's how DeSantis functions, and that's why I think that he'll sit it out. And if he doesn't, of course, I think Trump beats him anyway. I still am all in for MAGA populism because it worked. We've already seen that it worked. We tried it for 4 years. It did very, very well until the China virus happened to be leaked from the Wuhan lab. And then, of course, everyone ran roughshod over liberty and the economy got wrecked and the rest is history. Ronna McDaniel has not been helpful, has stood in the way of genuine upswelling populism, has stood in the way of progress, which is where the Republican Party was moving in the direction of, as opposed to the bad old days where they do basically what the liberal Democrats do, and they'd promise a bunch of populistic shit during the elections and then never actually try to get it through. Most of the Republicans did this from 2016 to 2020 as well. That's why Trump didn't accomplish more. He did well for someone who was continuously obstructed by his own party. You will note among Senate seats in 2022, and into the interim period with Cawthorn and others, the Republican Party at large did the same thing to numerous other people. These are the wackadoodles within the party, but that doesn't make them the bad guys. The GOP are the bad guys. They're the ones responsible for the current fiscal and diplomatic disaster that we're currently in association with their liberal Democrat friends. Fire Ronna McDaniel if you're intelligent and if you actually give a damn. If they keep her on, it will be a bellwether that the next couple of years, the Republicans are going to fumble over themselves. They're going to do dumb shit. And every time they fail, they're going to blame evil Trump. If only he had had better candidates that he endorsed. If only he had helped us more with money. If only he would shut up more. It's Donald's fault. You can be assured that that's the next 2 years of the GOP if Ronna McDaniel happens to get back in his RNC head. That's about all. Peace out.